We're going to go ahead and install our driver's side exhaust manifold that is located on the left-hand side of the engine, just above your oil filter. We're going to go ahead and use our 14mm socket and a couple extensions to remove the 2 bolts holding the exhaust pipe here to the bottom of our exhaust manifold. I'm going to go ahead and remove this cover. It is not necessary for you to remove this cover when doing the job. However, it's going to make it easier for you to see as we perform this video. I'm going to go ahead and pop off these 2 vacuum tubes right here and pull these off of the Egr tube and tuck those aside. So our Egr tube that comes down behind this insulation material here, it comes down and bolts to the exhaust manifold. Now the head for our bolt right here is pretty rusted, and it's going to be easier for us to go ahead and disconnect the Egr tube from up top. What we're going to do next is we're going to loosen our dipstick tube for our oil check. That's going to be by the stud on this upper forward stud right here. Next, we're going to go ahead and focus on the 3 lower studs on our exhaust manifold. They're tough to see, so that's why I wanted to share this with you now so you know where we're going to be working. So let's go ahead and get to work on that. We use our 13mm deep socket to go ahead and remove the nut securing the oil dipstick tube to the exhaust manifold stud. Now we did go ahead and soak this in rust penetrant. Go ahead and spin that nut and take that right off. We're going to go ahead and remove our 2 10mm bolts holding our throttle cable bracket. Once we have that off, just pop this off of our linkage here. I'm just going to swing this out of the way and take your oil dipstick tube. I'm going to go ahead and work this back and forth. Try and pull this up and out. I'm going to go ahead and remove our ignition wires here. I'm going to use a Sharpie marker, and I'm simply going to label these 1, 2, and 3. That way there, when we go to install them later on, we'll know there'll be 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead and tuck these up and out of the way. Let's go ahead and disconnect our Egr tube from the Egr. Now the bottom of our Egr tube here is bolted to the manifold, and there's a 5/16 bolt right here. Ours is pretty rusted. We're going to try and loosen and remove that, and I'm unable to get anything on this bolt here. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the head of this bolt off, remove the Egr tube, and then we'll source a replacement bolt for that. Use a 10mm deep socket. We're going to go ahead and loosen our Egr. Now you want to pay attention. You're going to remove the 2 bolts. Then the Egr will have a gasket behind it. Okay, to slide this off and pop that off. So now that we have the head of our bolt off, I'm going to go ahead and Work our Egr tube, slide that off, and remove that from the vehicle. Now we're using a 1/2 inch shallow socket on our lower bolt here. We're removing our middle one. And there's no particular order to go ahead and remove these here. We'll go ahead and loosen and remove them. Let's go to our forward lower bolt here. Now for the back lower bolt, we're going to switch over to a 12mm deep socket. It appears that our bolts are various sizes on this. Yours might be all consistent. Now on a 3-top bolt and 2 studs, these are actually fitting to a 13mm for ours. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove these. Go ahead and grab your exhaust manifold, grab the gasket, slide that out. Go ahead and remove the exhaust manifold. And what you want to do is inspect the surface of the cylinder head here where the exhaust manifold is going to go to. Make sure there's no remnants of any gasket material. Now our gasket was in really good condition. We're going to go ahead and reuse our gasket. Now is a perfect time for you to go ahead and install a new gasket. We're going to go ahead and install that manifold now. Let's go ahead and feed our manifold down. Get our gasket lined up. I'm going to go ahead and get our middle stud started here through our gasket. Get that lined up. And get that started a few threads. Once that's started, I'm going to go ahead and get our other bolts installed. Now we're trying to install our studs here for our exhaust manifold. The pressure from our downpipe or the rest of our exhaust system is pressing up on the exhaust manifold, so it's making it a little bit tough for us to get these bolts started. I'm just going to use a long pry bar. I'm going to press on that lower exhaust pipe, and it's going to allow me a little bit more flexibility to get these bolts started. I'm going to continue to do the same. Try and get these in. Now with all these snugged down, let's go ahead and torque them into position. Now you want to go ahead and torque down all 6 bolts to 15 foot-pounds. Repeat this for all 6. I'm going to go ahead and install our oil dipstick tube. Now, if you had removed yours, what you're going to want to do is clean off the dipstick tube, put a little bit of oil-resistant RTV around the top lip right here. If you have not removed it, you can just leave it. What we're going to do is we're going to slide this down. Get that lined up and install that tube in. Get that flange lined up right here. Let's go ahead and install the nut for that. You want to go ahead and snug that down. Go ahead and snug that down into place. We're going to get and install our Egr tube now, install our gasket, get that into place. I'm going to go ahead and feed our bolt through the back side. Let's go ahead and feed this tube down into place. What I'm going to do is go ahead and thread that bolt down as far as I can by hand. And just kind of try and snug it up to hold it in place. Let's go ahead and install our Egr. Line this up. Get our gasket on, put our bolts through. And we're going to get our 2 bolts started into the intake manifold here by hand. Now that we have our Egr reinstalled, go ahead and install our vacuum port on the top. And we can go ahead and get the nut reinstalled, thread that into our Egr, and we'll go ahead and get that snugged down. I want to just go ahead and snug this down into position. We have our vacuum tubes here. I'm going to make sure we get these reinstalled. Install our lower one here. Get our upper one installed. Once we have our upper portion of the Egr all installed, let's go ahead and tighten down our lower Egr bolt that is in the exhaust manifold. And once you feel that bolt bottom out, you just want to snug it up just a little bit beyond that. Let's go ahead and install our ignition wires. Install our throttle linkage bracket right here. And get these bolts started by hand first, and then we'll snug those down. Once those bolts are tight, just give them a little bit extra. They don't have to be super, super tight. Snap on your throttle cable here. Install our throttle linkage cover here. I'm going to put our bolt inside of our socket. I'm going to feed that up through the flange and up into the exhaust manifold. Try and get that bolt started a few threads. I'm going to grab the other bolt. Now we did put some anti-seize compound on these bolts themselves. I'm going to go back and forth, trying to evenly tighten the bolts into the flange. Good and tighten down our bolts to 30 foot-pounds. Want to do these evenly. All right, once we torque up the other side, you want to go ahead and lower the vehicle down. Go ahead and start it. You want to test for exhaust leaks and oil leaks.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.